right, so you're welcome. You're still watching the Business Africa live show right here on BTA, and a very good opportunity. You can watch us via the internet at www.businesstvrafrica.com. So wherever you are across the globe, you can watch the Business Africa live show. All you need to do is to go on our homepage and click on the button watch. You will be able to watch this program live. Today on our main segment, you remember we started a conversation some weeks back about the mining industry, and today we're putting the spotlight on environmental pollution, and we're looking at the economic impact. Most often we tend to look at just when we talk about some sectors, we focus more on the economic benefits that the country is deriving from, but one critical issue has to do with environment, and that's what we're putting the spotlight on with regards to the mining industry. And today I have a very passionate woman in the studio, and she's going to talk more on this particular development. She's in the person of Mrs. Anna Owusu Koranteng, and she is the Associate Executive Director, WACAM. Good morning and welcome to the Business Africa live show.
Good morning, Winifred.
I hope all is well.
Well, very well. And what about you?
I'm doing fine, just that some few issues, more concerned about the state at which we find ourselves as an economy and issues coming up. And today I'm privileged to have you talk about environmental issues confronting us as a nation. And I know you are well versed with some of these issues. Very passionate woman. That's why I'm so excited to host you this morning.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here with you this morning. Yes, the environment is what I dream of, because you can't have quality of life if you live in a polluted environment. And it so happens that when you talk about industries that are polluting, mining happens to be one of them. And if I talk about mining, it's not just limited to the illegal operations, but mining
in general,
totality is a major polluter. In fact, if you look through the literature, you recognize that the WHO did some assessments of polluting industries in the world, and mining happened to be the third among the 10 polluting agencies, institutions, and also the seventh. The third being the mechanized mining, and then the seventh being the artisanal mining. So if you have such an industry, then you are worried about what happens to regulation, especially within our environment, where you don't see the rigorous environmental controls in place. And so that's my passion.
That's your passion. But before we delve into your passion, let's just have a brief overview of what WACAM has been doing since its establishment. I'm sure a lot of people might have heard WACAM, and they're wondering, what exactly have you been doing? What exactly is the company into?
WACAM is a community-based organization. In fact, it's the first of its kind that's dealt with mining communities directly. And our vision is to use education as a tool for empowerment. And we think this is essential because when it comes to participation, there's so much abused word participation. It requires a lot of knowledge. And so if you have a situation where industries locate in rural communities, where capacities are so low, and then you talk about participation, it will just be limited to seeking the views of people or just informing community people that yes, we are going to disturb
by a project,
with a project, and they not really delving into it and knowing the extent of damage that will be caused to their lives. So we use this tool, and in our work, we first of all mobilize communities around their critical concerns, and then based on that, we provide them with the knowledge that they require, hoping that once they gain this knowledge, they would use the knowledge to seek redress for human rights violations. And we don't limit rights violations to just the civil political rights violations. We go beyond that to the whole definition of human rights, which encompasses the environmental, social, cultural, economic rights, and also the civil political rights of communities. And once we give them that knowledge, they are equipped and they take up the struggle. And I bet you many of the things that are changing in the mining sector today is because of community advocacy.
Okay.
And it was not limited only to Ghana, but then we work within the sub-region and also at the international community, using the concerns that communities raised as a yardstick to engage in advocacy and then seek for policy reforms and all that. In our work, we also do some sensitization for the media.
Okay.
And then we do some sensitization for tertiary institutions, students and lecturers and all.
So how would you assess your growth progress so far?
Well, we
some
began
key
some
achievements.
20 years ago, and then mining was seen as a development agenda and a security agenda. So anybody who talked anything negative about mining was perceived as anti-developer. And so if today we are sitting here and talking, and many people are getting interested in what we're doing, it's a sign that yes, we've moved that far. Yeah. And for us, we're talking about transparency in the industry. For us, we're talking about beneficiary ownership disclosures in the industry. For us, we're talking about environmental issues, how to safeguard our environment. It's a sign that no, it's not lost. But then it doesn't mean that we have gotten there. We still have a lot of things to do, because this industry happens to be very vast and it cuts across the countries and states. So, and once the motive for investment in some of these sectors is profits, then I bet you need to be on your feet and always be working to ensure that the right things are done.
Indeed, ensuring that the right things are done. Let me pick your opinion on the current state of mining in terms of its environmental outlook. How is it like? Is it promising? Is it a threat to human life? What is the current situation like?
Well, I would say that it's almost a hopeless situation. If you understand the environment and then you know what is happening within the industry, how today we cannot really talk about clean water with confidence in the country, how today we cannot be talking about pristine environment, forest reserves that have not been touched because of mining activities, how today we can not be talking about the quality of health of communities that live within this environment, how our cultural heritage is being lost because of mining, then it's not a good picture. And I am not saying this. In fact, the recent reports that I cited coming from the World Bank, which was 2011, also felt concern about the way we conducted mining in the past, and we're still conducting mining today. And they went on to talk about the environmental hazards, the limited financial benefits. You see, people come into this business and politicians think that once they allow our lives to be destroyed, at least we'll get some financial benefits. And even that is questionable. And so if you look at the sum total of the benefits that we are reaping from mining, I wouldn't want to even talk about the benefits, because on the net basis, it's always in the negative, because we lose so much for so little that we cannot even match the benefits. And as I'm saying, this has been cited twice. First, in 2005, when the World Bank evaluation team did an assessment of mining in Ghana, the conclusion was that we are reaping very minimal benefits, and the costs of mining was so huge. And they advised the government to do a cost-benefit analysis. For us to see if we really want to continue. And they even went on to say that that cost-benefit analysis should factor in community concerns and input. So it tells you that participation of community people was very lacking in that assessment. And as I'm saying, 2011, almost the same report came out. And we're still saying that, no, we don't have the capacity to engage in cost-benefit analysis in the country. So it means that all our interests is limited to just the financial benefits, which, according to EITI report, is nothing to talk about. If we're reaping our 0.8% of mining benefits to GDP, then the question that you ask is, why all this suffering and misery?
But is it to say that we have a very weak policy when it comes to the mining industry?
Well,
is that the case? Because looking at the regulatory aspects, one would be expecting that policies should be there to cushion or to address some of these concerns. So my question is, do we have a weak policy? That's why we are where we are.
I wouldn't say we have a weak policy, but the implementation has always been a problem. And even if we have a weak policy in the country, Ghana has ratified many conventions at the global level, within the sub-regional level. And that enjoins us. If you look at chapter 40 of our constitution, once we rectify some of these protocols, automatically they become part and parcel of our laws. Only they are not justiciable. I'm not a lawyer anyway. But then what it means is that if you go to court, you don't have clear penalties if people violate and things like that. But it doesn't mean that it's not part of our laws. It's something that we have agreed to once Parliament ratifies some of these things. And we can count on a number of them, which seeks to protect the environment, which seeks to protect citizens and all that. The problem has been with regulation and how we use the instruments available to us to achieve our goals as a state. And I think one major problem that I see in all this is that the lack of political will.
Lack of political
will. And you see, if politicians, one way or the other, are cited in some of these activities, or their close associates are cited in some of these activities, definitely they are not going to regulate the sector. And I'm talking about very key influential people in government who are, as we're speaking today, allowing mining in protected forests. So where is the will to even ensure that what we have is safeguard? And once you have that happening, that is where you have all the problems associated with mining manifesting. For instance, now the topic is illegal mining. I don't want discussing illegal mining. Why? Because if it's illegal, it's not for me to check. It's the responsibility of the state.
So we shouldn't be even discussing issues of illegal mining.
Well, people discuss, but then the point is that why should we have illegalities at
when
this
we have
level?
Body.
When we have all the institutions that claim they are working. So why should this happen to us as a state? And then we should also go back and trace the history of the illegalities. You see, when you have corporate bodies engaging in illegal practices to the extent that human lives were lost in the past because people were suspected to be galamsey operators, or they were doing their businesses and the corporate bodies felt that no, they were trespassing, and they got some of them killed, some of them dogs were released to eat them up and all that, and nobody is arrested. You tell people that yes, in mining you can do anything and nothing happens. So now that we are confronted with the real problems that we sought to correct so many years ago, some 18 years ago, everybody is crying, illegality is taking us, illegality is taking us, illegal mining is widespread. Why were we not even able to control the formalized institutions, industries that came here? It's all because we lack the political will to do so. And I believe that political will does not just happen. If people tie their interests to the interests of such industries, then you have some level of corruption happening. And that's why we have all these things happening and we seem so helpless. So the story of illegal mining in Ghana is quite complicated. And now that you have politicians also promising left and right that we will allow you to operate because if we disturb you, you may not vote for us and all that. It compounds, it compounds the problems that we have. And let us not forget that the problems that we're creating today will not just affect us, but the problems are going to affect people who are not born today. And that is how severe environmental problems are. if it's going to affect the two of us, yes, we mismanaged and then we bear the consequences of our actions. But in this situation, the environment is polluted, water sources are polluted, and we keep on churning out data of year 2020, we are going to be water stressed, year 2025, we are going to be water stressed. We are always pushing it. Meanwhile, today, we are almost water stressed. It happened this January, February, where we had a Owusu, the water level going so low that nobody could tap into it to process for us. So we are not talking even about the future. But then the major problem that we have is what happens after these companies fold up. And let us not forget that even for the formalized companies, they have a lifespan. And after 20, 30 years, they will not be in the country. But then all the problems that we accumulate, the legacy problems, will live with us. And what happens to us? Nothing. Because we have not prepared for that. We have not properly regulated the activities.
So is it the case also that bodies or institutions that are meant to do their job are also lack the willpower to actually act on some of these issues? Because we know we have the EPA, for instance, which is supposed to also check environmental issues. Is it to say that there are some influences also coming in from political leaders, making it difficult for them to also operate as an independent body?
Well, I think you need to have a conversation with Forestry Commission, for instance, with EPA, with Minerals Commission. And one clip that I saw recently on telly, where communities in the Wassa area were demonstrating against mining in forest reserves, that they reported the incident to the police. The police officer was ready to fight the company, and then at a point the officer told them that there's some huge load from above, which is preventing him to act, and so he cannot act. This was on telly, so if the crew
reported it wrongly,
then I'm wrong, because I wasn't there. And the community were left with no option but to demonstrate. And the whole community was clad in red and demonstrating and trying to get their voices be heard. So it's not out of place for institutions to be limited because of the lack of political will. And so once you have a system, leadership, that is not ready to do it right, it influences every sector. And so even if you work in the institution and you think you want to do it right,
to make a change, becomes difficult.
It becomes very difficult. Now in Ghana, I believe that if you want to see things being done right, you need to fight and die in the struggle, because many things have gone wrong in the country. And so we have that aspect of it. We have the lack of logistics for institutions to work. For instance, go and ask EPA how they analyze their samples. Because the last time that I checked, they were still building a facility to analyze sample. And so what happens? Who are analyzing samples for them? These are things that we need to understand. And then when you come to the other institutions, the police, the
Minerals
Commission, Forestry Commission, and all the institutions that ensure SHRAJ, for instance, how are they equipped to work efficiently? And so these are all factors that ensure that people do not do it right.
So it means that both past and present governments have failed us in tackling environmental issues.
In fact, environmental consciousness is quite new. And until the 1970s, it wasn't even considered when the industries located anywhere, until people started having problems. It started in the United States and all that, before it became part of the global consciousness. So it's still having its problems. But as we speak today, there are many, many, many protocols that safeguards the environment. But you see, if you focus so much on environmental economic benefits,
okay,
then you have a problem. And for some of us, people think we are not thinking straight because we want food. Why don't provide food? But it's not every food that is healthy food.
exactly.
So if you go to the market and then you find that, yes, you have abundance of cassava and you buy and you do not know where it's coming from, the tendency of you ingesting cassava that is laced with arsenic or cyanide is high because it might have come from an environment that is polluted. And over there, you are not going to ask questions as to where you brought your cassava from. If you breathe in the air, there's nothing like demarcating where the air is fresh and pure and where the air is polluted. So you see, if you assume that, we are making financial benefits and we can downplay the environmental consequences, you recognize that the cost of environmental degradation is always higher than the benefits that you derive from the industry. And this is what we should look at. Some research was done to assess the value of the environment, the economic tree, the services that environment, forests can provide. And then if you destroy that and you invest for profit, what you realize, and almost always the costs or the benefits of pristine environment is about 3-5 times what you get when you destroy the environment for whatever reasons. So we really need to do the best, the cost-benefit analysis and see our limits. There's nothing like saying that, no, don't touch the environment, don't touch the forest, because then it means we all die, because we all derive our strength from the environment. But then in doing so, you make sure that the capability of the environment to absorb your waste equals the destruction that you cause to the environment. Once you do more destruction to the environment, definitely you're going to have a polluted environment. And that's the situation we find ourselves in.
So looking at this particular situation, if we to forecast, let's say 5 to 10 years, its economic impact, if we don't pay critical attention to environmental pollution in the country, what kind of outlook are we going to have, and the kind of impact in terms of economic impact that we will be facing as a country in the next 5 years? How is that going to be like?
You see, let's use agriculture.
Okay.
Anybody understands that once you go into conventional agriculture, you use agrochemicals and the fertilizers and all that, pesticides. The first year you increase yield, second year it goes up, third year it goes up, the fourth year it starts dropping, it declines. And then later on, even as you add more, you have less returns from that. It's exactly the same picture that I want to paint for the environment. Whatever we are getting from mining, from all the other sectors, we take as profits. As a country, we take as profits without factoring in the other costs. When I talk about the costs to the physical environment, the cost to water bodies being destroyed, the cost of losing our identity as human beings.
So these are all the opportunity costs we are losing.
Exactly.
Just to get something very little.
The costs of losing our identity as human beings, losing our cultural, our value orientation and all that. The cost of losing our economic activity, because mining would always coincide with where we have our food production areas and all that. So the cost of losing that, and then the costs of having the dignity as a human being, to see that yes, I work with my hands and whatever comes out of my labor is what I'm enjoying. You don't have that, because if you go to many of the mining communities, they've lost their livelihoods, they've lost their culture.
We're seeing poverty rising.
Exactly. We see poverty rising. And these are empirical facts. So once we do not weigh the options and then define for ourselves what exactly we want to use mining for, and assume that, once you find the gold, dig and destroy the environment, and then later on we'll think about it. people go to the extent of saying that, you see, what we see as waste today could in future be a resource. If it doesn't turn out to be a resource, what happens? So we just don't have to assume that we can continue business as usual and have any benefits from what we're doing today. We are going to lose out. And that is what we are heading towards. The country may go into crisis. For instance, if a company would employ 10,000 people and displace 20,000 people, or 50,000 people, or 100,000 people, what is the net loss?
Exactly.
We are not doing that. And so what we are doing is that we are encouraging a lot of people from the rural communities to migrate to urban areas. And they come and choke in Accra, Kumasi, Takwa, and those big areas. And once they are there and they do not have employment, they do not have education because they came without education, they do not have a place to sleep, nature will sort them out and they would survive. And in the process of surviving, they can do all kinds of activities, which may be legal or illegal. The other thing is that if you have a handful, an army of unemployed youths walking about in the streets of Accra, Kumasi, anybody can entice them to get involved in any activity. And so then we are breeding a generation of people who can be involved in conflicts.
So that's the future we
the future we are looking at. The future we are looking at. We are also looking at a future where we have so polluted an environment that you do not know whether our life expectancy is going to drop to 20 or 30. Because once you know you are not taking clean water, clean air, clean food, that definitely will reduce your life expectancy. And what are we looking for? Life that will be peaceful, where we'll have a place to sleep, and then food to eat and all that. Good health. So if we cannot count on all these things, that is the picture that we are painting.
Quite a worrying situation. But
yes.
There was this report that came from the Minerals Commission. It was reported that small-scale miners, I want to believe it's a small-scale miners because I haven't done my checks, because the story actually said illegal miners will be relocated. Let's assume that's not illegal miners, but small-scale miners, they are designating a place for them, and they are relocating small-scale miners to a special place. Is that something we should go by, or you think that we need to do a proper analysis of the location first before just relocating them in addressing illegal activities in the country?
You see, we should not lose sight of the fact that mining happens to be just one sector of the economy. There are other sectors, and many of them are land-based sectors. So if you live in a country where you do not have clear policies on how to use your land resource, and because many people are unemployed, so they are drifting into a sector that is not regulated, you formalize that sector. So what does that mean? Are you saying that agriculture should collapse? Are you saying that we shouldn't have land to build? Are you saying that we shouldn't have land preserved as protected lands? Are you saying that we shouldn't have water sources? Because once you mine the forest reserves and the forests, you are mining the water sources. So water becomes a scarce commodity. This requires that we do a whole assessment of the economy and then identify why we are in this situation. Many of the problems that we face, for me, is as a result of a leadership problem. Bad decisions being taken, and then poor consultation of people who will be affected by the decisions of politicians, the so-called policy makers. If they involve us in the decisions, we would know that we prefer maybe agriculture over mining.
Looking at the cost benefits.
Exactly. We can't just assume that everybody who is in mining today is there because the person loves mining. No. The person may be there whether legally or illegally, because that is the only option that is offered. And so once there are no sectors that are booming, and it's only those that is being given all the push. Mind you, mining is one sector that has a lot of support from government, a lot of benefits, a lot of incentives for them to operate. So if such incentives are drifted to agriculture, for instance, would agriculture be in the state that it is today? So these are the options that we have to weigh, and then do proper mapping of skills and all that. How people need to be trained to be employed in all the other sectors, and develop the various linkages to make sure that mining may be there, but may not be the most important sector of the economy. And once we're able to do that and do the proper mapping and see how we are going to allocate land resource for the various sectors, then we are talking business. But we can't just assume that because many people are drifting into mining illegally, that sector should absorb everybody. I don't want to
and
be
therefore
a miner.
we're creating a place for them. So you're not really of the view, you're not really of the opinion that they need to...
something is not legal, regulation should deal with that. If we think that, yes, because people are... The reason why people are drifting to mining is because they are unemployed, create opportunities for people to be employed. And that's why we pay taxes. We pay taxes for leaders to use and take decisions that will benefit all of us. We do not pay taxes for them to throw their hands in the air and say that we are being consumed by the problems and that we can't do anything about that. That for me is a sign of a bad leader. And that is what we are experiencing in Ghana. And I want to state that these problems started some years ago. We overlooked the signals, and now we are confronted with a situation which is consuming all of us.
Is it too late to curb this particular canker?
No.
What can we do then?
You see, you need to build confidence in the people. And that's why I love my organization, WACAM. Because we do not sit in the offices and assume that people should understand ABC. We go to the grassroots and get people to understand the issues. And collectively, we push for policy changes. It's difficult because if you have a leadership that is not listening to the concerns of citizens, then you have a problem.
Is that what you're facing currently?
Oh, we have faced all kinds of challenges, but I don't want to talk about challenges. All right. But you see, we can still do it right. I was in a meeting yesterday at the TUC, and a political party leader came there, and these questions were asked, and at least one promise that he made, which if he wins, I'm going to hold him to it, was that he was going to ensure that regulators implement laws and policies, especially regarding environmental policies, regarding protection of forest reserves. And I'm waiting, if that candidate wins, I'm talking about the MPP candidate, MPP. Then we are going to hold him on that.
Have we not had a lot of promises? And sometimes, because it looks like if we're taking promises again, and just after election, for instance, I am of the opinion that when you promise somebody and then based on that, we tend to vote on that promise. Within 4 years, if the person is unable to, it means that you're already a slave or you're in prison for 4 years.
Yeah.
And how do you ensure that, or how do you hold him to it? Because you made mention of the fact that sometimes they throw their hands in their hair and tell you that, okay, we don't have the logistics, we don't have this. But these were promises that they made. Looking at the promise that they've made so far, regards to just the mining sector, do you think that some of these promises are feasible in terms of its implementation?
I think anybody who is serious with the environment can make it work.
Okay.
And that's why we do not rely on promises made by politicians, but then go to the grassroots and get people to understand that as a citizen, you have a right to clean environment. You have a right to participate in decisions for good governance and all that. And so when the people know that, yes, those are our rights, they also engage in some discussions with policymakers, what we term government citizens engagement. And once that is happening, at least it promotes the discourse, and then good governance could be a result of that. But then if people live in ignorance, they don't know about these rights, then whatever the politician says, they absorb that as a truth. So we are not just sitting and then listening to promises of politicians. We are equipping citizens to be active participants in decision-making processes.
And hold them accountable. That's why I'm saying that if they win, I'm going to hold them accountable. And I bet you we've done that in the past. When the first regime was there, PNDC were branded as against PNDC. When NDC came, we were MPP. When MPP came, we were NDC. When NDC came, we were MPP. So you work with all political parties. It doesn't really matter.
We work on issues.
Okay.
We are very political, but then we don't stick with one political group.
Exactly.
We work on the issues, because the issues change lives, not the particular or whatever. But issues, when they are addressed, will change lives of citizens. And I want to challenge all citizens that it is a responsibility on us to challenge politicians to do it right, because the opening part of the Constitution says its sovereignty resides with us. And once you are not able to go there, because all the 27 million Ghanaians cannot sit in parliament, if you vote somebody to power, demand accountability from the person and demand transparency. So if we are able to do this as citizens, it can minimize the corrupt practices, the poor leadership quality that we experience in the country, and equip people to come out and then contribute to good governance principles.
So just less than 2 months, or probably let's say a month and just some few days for us to go to the polls. What would be your final comments to Ghanaians, as it's a critical moment? Everybody is looking for developmental projects. We want to see the economy growing. We want to see growth in the economy in all sectors, not concentrated in one sector like what Nigeria is facing as a result of the concentrating on oil. So we want to see how best we can diversify our economy. What would be your message to Ghanaians?
Well, my message has been stated, and I'm just reiterating it, that governance is not about political parties. Governance is your ability to participate in decisions. And so when politicians come, we should have a fair understanding of what they promise us, and then subject their message to critical analysis and ensure that we create a space for ourselves. We don't allow them to create that space for us. We create a space for ourselves to engage them on issues. And that in a democratic era, we have the freedom to express ourselves as citizens of the state. And the expression is not only limited to just voting, but then the expression of our rights of ourselves also requires that we monitor whatever they are doing step by step.
That's very important.
And then go and all out to ensure that our will is what is carried, and not the will of the individual politician.